My name is Ben Forrest, and I used to think I was the man of the house. Turns out, I was just the ATM with a mustache. It was a Tuesday morning in October, when my world cracked wide open like a cheap windshield. I was sitting at my kitchen table, nursing black coffee and scrolling through bills on my phone, when my wife Nina waltzed in wearing a dress that cost more than my weekly paycheck. She grabbed her purse, kissed the air near my cheek, and announced she was going shopping with her girlfriends. "Use the credit card," I said without looking up. "The Visa, not the MasterCard. We're close to the limit on that one." Nina paused at the door, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against the frame. "Oh, Ben." Sweet, clueless Ben. Her voice carried that condescending tone I'd grown to hate over our 15 years of marriage. "I already maxed out both cards yesterday. Lana and I found the most amazing boutique downtown." I looked up then, really looked at her. Nina was 39 and still stunning, with honey blonde hair and the kind of figure that turned heads at Dylan's soccer games. But her eyes, God, when had they become so cold? "What do you mean, maxed out?" She shrugged, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "I mean I spent money. You know, that thing you work so hard to make? Don't worry about it. You'll figure something out. You always do." "Nina, we talked about this. The mortgage payment is due next week, and Dylan needs new cleats for—" "Dylan can wait." She turned to face me fully, and I saw something in her expression that made my stomach drop. "You know what your problem is, Ben? You think you're important, but you're not. You're just my ATM, nothing more." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I sat there, coffee growing cold in my hands, as she clicked out the door in her designer heels. "I'm an HVAC repairman. I fix air conditioners and heating systems for a living, which means I spend my days crawling through basements and attics, getting dirty so other people can stay comfortable. It's honest work, and it pays decent, enough to keep Nina in her boutique clothes and our son Dylan in his expensive soccer league. But apparently it also made me nothing more than a walking bank account. I called the credit card company that afternoon, sitting in my work van outside Mrs. Patterson's house after installing her new furnace. The automated system cheerfully informed me that both our cards were indeed maxed out. $8,000 on the Visa, $6,500 on the MasterCard. Nina had spent $14,000 in 2 days. On what? I scrolled through the transactions. Nordstrom, Sephora, some place called Lux Salon and Spa, a restaurant charge for $340 at lunch yesterday, for 2 people. 2 people. That's when I noticed something else. The restaurant charge was at Romano's, the fancy Italian place downtown. Nina had told me she was having lunch with her sister yesterday, but her sister lives in Phoenix. I sat in that van for 20 minutes, staring at my phone screen, feeling something cold and hard settling in my chest. Then I did what any reasonable man would do. I called the credit card companies and canceled both cards. The fallout was spectacular. My phone started ringing at 3:47 p.m. I was elbow deep in a commercial air handler at the time, so I let it go to voicemail. By the time I checked, I had 17 missed calls from Nina. The voicemail she left made me laugh out loud, right there in the mechanical room of Henderson and Associates law firm. "Ben, what the hell did you do? My card got declined at Macy's, in front of everyone. I'm standing here like some kind of poor person. Fix this right now, or I swear to God." I deleted it and went back to work. She was waiting for me when I got home that evening, pacing our living room like a caged tiger. Dylan was at soccer practice, which was probably for the best. "You embarrassed me," she hissed the moment I walked through the door. "Lana and Stacy were there. They saw my card get declined. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" I set my toolbox down carefully and looked at her, really looked at her. When had she become this person? When had the woman I married turned into someone who cared more about impressing her friends than paying our mortgage? "Who'd you have lunch with yesterday, Nina?" The question caught her off guard. She blinked, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Fear? What are you talking about? Romano's. Yesterday. $340 for lunch. You told me you were with your sister. That was. She straightened her shoulders, and the mask slipped back into place. That's none of your business. It's my business when it's my money. Your money? Nina laughed, but there was no humor in it. Ben, honey, let me explain something to you. I handle the finances in this house. I decide how the money gets spent. You just make it. That's your job. That's all you're good for. Something snapped inside me then. Not broke. Snapped. Like a rubber band stretched too far. I walked to our home office, Nina following behind me, still talking, still explaining why I was wrong and she was right. I opened our laptop and logged into our bank account. What are you doing? She demanded. I transferred every penny from our joint checking account into my personal account. Then I transferred it again into a new account at a different bank entirely, an account with only my name on it. Ben, stop it. This isn't funny. I wasn't laughing. I opened our joint savings account and did the same thing. Then I changed all the passwords. You want to know what's funny, Nina? You spending $14,000 in 2 days and then calling me an ATM. You know what happens when you abuse an ATM? She was staring at the computer screen, watching our joint accounts drain to zero. You can't do this. I need that money. For what? More lunches at Romano's with mysterious friends? It's not like that. Then tell me what it is like. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then she turned and walked out of the room. I heard her on the phone an hour later, talking in hushed tones in our bedroom. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, almost panicked. That night, after Dylan got home from practice, and we'd eaten a quiet dinner of leftover pizza, I tucked my son into bed like I had every night for the past 14 years. Dad? Dylan looked up at me with serious brown eyes. My eyes, not Nina's. Are you and Mom getting divorced? The question hit me harder than Nina's ATM comment had. Why would you ask that, buddy? She's been acting weird lately, and she's always on her phone, texting someone. She smiles at her phone more than she smiles at us, out of the mouths of babes. I don't know what's going to happen, Dylan. But whatever does happen, you and I are going to be fine, okay? He nodded, but I could see the worry in his young face. Nina's selfishness wasn't just hurting me, it was hurting our son. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Nina pretended to sleep beside me. Around 2 a.m., her phone buzzed with a text message. She grabbed it quickly, checking to make sure I was asleep before reading it. In the dim glow of her screen, I saw her smile. The kind of smile she used to give me back when we were happy. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. No note, no explanation. Just an empty coffee cup in the sink and the lingering scent of her expensive perfume. I was loading my van for the day's jobs when Mrs. McCullough, our 70-year-old neighbor, waved me over to her fence. Ben, honey, I don't want to be a busybody, but I thought you should know. Nina left in a red Camaro this morning. Wasn't her car? Mrs. McCullough had lived on our street for 40 years. She knew every car, every dog, every piece of neighborhood gossip. If she said Nina left in someone else's car, then Nina left in someone else's car. Did you see who was driving? Tall man, dark hair. Looked like that fellow who runs the used car lot on 5th Street. Rick something. Rick Mason. I knew the name, knew the reputation. Slick Rick, they called him. The kind of guy who could sell ice to Eskimos and make them thank him for it. Nina had mentioned him a few times over the past few months, something about him helping with marketing for her company. Marketing. Right. I thanked Mrs. McCullough and drove to my first job of the day, my mind racing. By lunchtime, I'd made a decision. I parked outside Rick's dealership, Mason's Motors, where every deal's a steal, and watched through the window. Rick was there, all right, talking to a young couple about a blue Honda. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, handsome in a sleazy way, with perfect teeth and a gold watch that caught the light when he gestured. My phone buzzed. A text from Nina. "We need to talk. Meet me at home at 6. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "No. You want to talk? You can do it somewhere public. Denny's on 5th Street, 7 p.m. Her response came immediately. "Fine. But you better be ready to apologize." Apologize? For what? For refusing to be her personal ATM anymore? I spent the rest of the afternoon fixing a broken air conditioner at the high school, but my mind wasn't on the job. I kept thinking about Nina's smile when she read that text, about Rick Mason's gold watch, about Dylan asking if we were getting divorced. At 6:45 p.m., I walked into Denny's and chose a booth in the back, where we could talk without being overheard, but where there were still plenty of witnesses if things got ugly. Nina arrived 10 minutes late, looking like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover. She slid into the booth across from me, her face a mask of controlled anger. "This is ridiculous, Ben. We could have talked at home." "I don't trust you at home anymore." That got her attention. She leaned back, studying my face. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know about Rick Mason." The color drained from Nina's face so fast I thought she might faint right there in the Denny's booth. She recovered quickly, though. I had to give her credit for that. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know you left the house in his car this morning. I know you had lunch with someone at Romano's for $340. I know you've been texting someone at 2 in the morning and smiling about it." I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. "What I don't know is how long you've been screwing him. Ben, please. You're being paranoid." "Am I?" "Then show me your phone." She clutched her purse tighter. "I don't have to prove anything to you." "You're right. You don't. Just like I don't have to keep funding your affair." The word hung between us like a loaded gun. Nina's carefully composed mask finally cracked. It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, there was something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not guilt, calculation. "Rick is helping me with something. A business opportunity." "What kind of business opportunity requires you to max out our credit cards?" "The kind that's going to make us rich, Ben. Richer than your little HVAC business ever could." There it was. The contempt she'd been hiding behind fake smiles and designer clothes. My little business. The business that paid for her lifestyle, her clothes, her spa treatments, her $300 lunches. "And you couldn't discuss this business opportunity with your husband?" "Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. You're so small-minded, Ben, so content with your little life, your little job, your little dreams. Rick sees potential in me. He sees what I could become." "And what's that?" "His mistress?" She slapped me then, right across the face in front of God and half the dinner crowd at Denny's. The sound echoed through the restaurant, and every conversation stopped. I sat there for a moment, my cheek stinging, the taste of metal where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. Then I smiled. "Thank you." "What?" "Thank you for making this easy." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. "I've been recording this conversation since you sat down." Nina's eyes went wide. "You can't." "I can. It's perfectly legal to record a conversation you're part of in this state. And now I have you on tape admitting to an affair and calling my business little." I pocketed the phone. "How do you think that's going to play in divorce court?" She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe I was seeing a stranger too. "I want half of everything, Nina. The house, the cars, the savings accounts. Oh wait, those are empty now, aren't they? Guess you'll have to ask Rick to help you with the legal fees." I stood up to leave, then turned back. "One more thing. Dylan stays with me. No judge in the world is going to give custody to a woman who maxes out credit cards to fund her affair while her husband works 60-hour weeks to keep the family afloat." I left her sitting there, staring at the table, her perfect composure finally shattered. The next morning, I woke up to find Nina gone, really gone this time. Half her clothes missing from the closet, her jewelry box empty, her car keys gone from the hook by the door. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Ben, I'm staying with Lana for a while. We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable. Don't do anything stupid. N. Don't do anything stupid, like she was the reasonable one here. I made Dylan breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, his favorite, and broke the news as gently as I could. Mom's going to be staying at Aunt Lana's for a while. Dylan looked up from his eggs. Because of the fighting? Yeah, buddy. Because of the fighting. Is she coming back? I wanted to lie, to tell him everything would be fine, that Mommy and Daddy would work things out. But Dylan was 14, not 4. He deserved the truth. I don't know. Maybe. But if she doesn't, you and I are going to be just fine. Better than fine. He nodded, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. Nina wasn't just destroying our marriage, she was breaking our son's heart. After I dropped Dylan at school, I drove to my first job of the day. But instead of going straight to work, I made a detour past Mason's Motors. Rick's red Camaro was parked in front, and through the window, I could see him talking on the phone. Probably to Nina, planning their next move. I sat in my van for a few minutes, thinking. Then I got out and walked into the dealership. Help you with something? Rick looked up from his phone call, ending it quickly when he saw me. Just looking, I said, walking around the showroom. Nice place you got here. Thanks. You in the market for a car? Maybe. Depends on the deal. I stopped in front of a blue sedan with a price sticker that made me whistle. This seems a little steep for a car with 80,000 miles on it. Rick moved closer, and I caught a whiff of expensive cologne. That's a quality vehicle. Low maintenance, reliable. Perfect for a working man like yourself. How do you know what kind of work I do? Something flickered in his eyes. Just a guess. You look like a guy who works with his hands. I am. I'm also a guy who doesn't like being lied to. I turned to face him fully. You know who I am, don't you, Rick? He tried to play it cool, but I saw the moment recognition hit. Should I? I'm Ben Forrest, Nina's husband. Rick's salesman smile faltered for just a second. Then it was back, bright as ever. Nina's mentioned you, says you're a hard worker. I bet she has. Tell me, Rick, when you're helping my wife with her business opportunities, do you always do it in hotel rooms? This time, the smile disappeared completely. I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is you thinking I'm stupid. I stepped closer, and Rick stepped back. I know about the affair. I know about the money. What I want to know is what you're really after. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. See, I've been thinking about this all night. Nina's not exactly subtle, and she's definitely not smart enough to plan something like this on her own. She maxes out our cards, starts a fight about money, then runs to you for comfort. Classic setup for a divorce where she gets to play the victim. Rick's face had gone pale. You're paranoid, man. Nina's a friend, that's all. Friends don't leave their houses in other friends' cars at 6 in the morning. I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Here's what's going to happen, Rick. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stop taking her calls, stop seeing her, stop whatever game you two are playing. And if I don't? I looked around the showroom, at the expensive cars, the fancy office, the reputation he'd built. Then I'm going to make your life very, very difficult. I left him standing there and walked back to my van. As I drove away, I saw him through the window, already reaching for his phone. My phone rang 5 minutes later. Nina. Ben, what the hell did you just do? I had a conversation with your business partner. Rick called me crying. He said you threatened him. I don't cry, Nina. Maybe you should ask yourself why Rick does. You can't do this. You can't just, I can do whatever I want. I'm not your ATM anymore, remember? I hung up and turned off my phone. I had work to do. The rest of the week passed quietly. Too quietly. Nina didn't come home, didn't call again, didn't even show up to Dylan's soccer game on Saturday. I sat in the bleachers with the other parents pretending everything was normal, while inside I felt like I was coming apart at the seams. After the game, Dylan scored twice and I was proud as hell. We went to our usual post-game pizza place. That's where I ran into Lana Morrison, Nina's best friend and current roommate. Lana was sitting in a corner booth with Stacy Hoffman, another member of Nina's inner circle. They were deep in conversation, heads bent together like they were planning a bank robbery. "Dad, isn't that Mom's friend?" Dylan had spotted them too. "Yeah, buddy." "It is. Should we say hi?" Before I could answer, Lana looked up and saw us. She whispered something to Stacy, and they both turned to stare. Then Lana stood up and walked over to our table. "Ben." "Dylan." Her smile was fake as a $3 bill. "How are you two holding up?" "We're fine," I said. "How's Nina?" "She's adjusting. This is hard for her, you know. She never wanted things to get this messy." Messy. I tasted the word. Is that what we're calling it? Lana's smile tightened. "Look, Ben, I know you're angry. But Nina's my friend, and I think you should know. She's not the villain here." "Really? Then who is?" "You tell me. You're the one who cut off her access to money, embarrassed her in public, threatened her friend." "Her friend?" I looked over at Stacy, who was pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. "Is that what Rick is?" "A friend." "Rick is a businessman who saw potential in Nina. Something you never did." "What kind of potential requires maxing out credit cards and sneaking around behind her husband's back?" Lana leaned closer, lowering her voice. "The kind that's going to make her rich, Ben. Rich enough that she won't need you anymore." There it was. The truth, finally. This wasn't about love or passion or even Rick Mason's pretty smile. This was about money. It was always about money. "Thanks for clearing that up," I said. "Dylan, finish your pizza. We're leaving." "Ben, wait." But I was already standing, helping Dylan gather his soccer gear. As we walked toward the door, I heard Stacy say something to Lana, and they both laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. That night, after Dylan went to bed, I sat in my home office and did something I'd never done before in 15 years of marriage. I went through Nina's things. Her computer was password protected, but I knew Nina. She wasn't creative with passwords. It took me 3 tries: Dylan's birthday, our anniversary, and finally, her own birthday backwards. I was in. Nina's email account was a gold mine of betrayal. Months of correspondence with Rick Mason going back to February, 8 months ago. But it wasn't the lovey-dovey affair emails I'd expected. These were business emails. Cold, calculating, and completely focused on money. My money. The first email was dated February 14th, Valentine's Day, which would have been funny if it wasn't so twisted. "Rick, met with the lawyer today. He confirmed what you said about community property laws. If I can document financial abuse, cutting off access to funds, and emotional distress, I can get more than half. Need to establish a pattern of unreasonable behavior on B's part. Let me know when you want to meet to discuss strategy." And Rick's response was even worse. "Nina, perfect. Remember, we need documentation. Save every text, every email, every conversation. The more controlling he looks, the better your case. My buddy at the law firm says judges love the financial abuse angle, especially with blue-collar guys. They assume we're all Neanderthals. Play up the emotional distress. Make sure you have witnesses to his unreasonable behavior." I sat back in my chair, feeling sick. This wasn't an affair. It was a con job. Nina and Rick had been planning to destroy me for 8 months, setting me up to look like a controlling husband so she could take me to the cleaners in divorce court. But that wasn't even the worst part. I scrolled through more emails, finding detailed discussions about our finances, our house, even Dylan's college fund. They'd planned it all out: how to maximize her settlement, how to get custody of Dylan and the child support that came with him, even how to claim half my business. Then I found the email that made me see red. Rick, B, took the bait perfectly. Canceled the cards just like you said he would. Lana and Stacy both witnessed the humiliation at Macy's. Stacy even got it on video. With his history of controlling behavior documented, plus the financial abuse, I should be able to get the house, primary custody, and at least 60% of assets. The business valuation came back at $180,000, so that's another $90,000 minimum. Plus alimony and child support. We're looking at a $400,000 plus payday, just like you calculated. And Nina. Excellent work. You're a natural at this. Once the divorce is final and you get your settlement, we can start the next phase. I've got 3 other marks lined up, all with substantial assets and trusting natures. With your skills and my connections, we could clear $2 million in the next 5 years. R. I read that email 3 times before it sank in. Nina wasn't just planning to divorce me, she was planning to make a career out of it. She and Rick were running a long-term con, targeting married men with money and setting up their wives to fleece them in divorce court. And I wasn't even her first victim. I dug deeper and found emails about Project Atlanta and Project Denver, previous cons they'd run in other cities. Rick would move to a new town, set up a business, and identify targets. Then Nina would seduce the mark, marry him, and after a few years, they'd engineer a divorce that left the husband broke and Nina wealthy. They'd done this before, multiple times. My hands were shaking as I printed out every email, every document, every piece of evidence. By the time I was done, I had a stack of papers 3 inches thick. But I wasn't done yet. Nina's browser history showed searches for divorce lawyers, investigators, and apartments. She also had a secret Instagram under Nina Sterling, full of photos with Rick, restaurants, hotels, captions about new beginnings, and leaving the past behind. The latest post showed her in lingerie, writing she was ready for a new life. Saved everything, backed it up, and by dawn decided on my move. Monday I dropped Dylan at school and went to Patricia Hernandez, the best divorce attorney. She called the evidence extraordinary, grounds not just for divorce but fraud and conspiracy. She promised custody, frozen assets, even prison for Nina. But I wanted more. My next stop was Mason's Motors. Rick froze when I mentioned Project Atlanta and Jennifer Walsh, another victim. I told him I had Nina's records of their scams. Either he vanished or I'd expose him to every victim and the police. He finally nodded, asking for days to close up. I gave him until Friday, then I went to Lana Morrison. She tried to cover for Nina until I showed her screenshots of their messages about keeping me in the dark. She defended Nina as unhappy, but I told her it was about money, not love. I warned her to pick a side before the truth came out. I left Lana standing in her doorway and drove across town to the Marriott. Nina's car was in the parking lot, room 237. I'd found it in her emails. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. "Housekeeping," I called out in a fake accent. The door opened, and there was Nina, wearing a hotel bathrobe and looking annoyed. When she saw me, her expression changed to shock, then fear, then anger. "Ben, what are you doing here? We need to talk. I don't have anything to say to you." "That's funny, because you had plenty to say to Rick. 8 months' worth, according to your emails." Nina went very still. "What emails?" I pushed past her into the hotel room. It was a suite, expensive, with champagne on ice and lingerie scattered across the bed. Rick was nowhere to be seen, but his clothes were hanging in the closet. "Project Ben," I said, turning to face her. "That's what you called it, right? Your plan to destroy my life and steal everything I've worked for?" Nina's mask finally slipped completely. The loving wife, the concerned friend, the victim of an unreasonable husband, it all fell away, leaving something cold and calculating in its place. "You went through my computer." I went through my computer, in my house. That I pay for. You had no right. I had every right. I stepped closer, and she backed away. You want to know what I found, Nina? I found emails to divorce lawyers. I found research on community property laws. I found your secret Instagram account where you post pictures of yourself with Rick in hotel rooms. Nina's face had gone pale, but her eyes were defiant. So what? You were never enough for me, Ben. Never smart enough, never ambitious enough, never man enough. Rick showed me what I was missing. Rick showed you how to commit fraud. Rick showed me how to get what I deserve. What you deserve? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You deserve exactly what you're about to get, Nina. Nothing. You can't prove anything. I pulled out the flash drive. I can prove everything, every email, every plan, every lie, including the ones about your previous victims. For the first time since I'd known her, Nina looked genuinely afraid. Ben, please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You and Rick have been running this con for years. Find a successful man, marry him, spend a few years setting him up, then take him for everything he's worth in the divorce. Rinse and repeat. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. The only thing I don't understand is why you picked me. I'm not rich. I don't have a medical practice or a law firm. I fix air conditioners for a living. Nina's laugh was bitter. That's exactly why we picked you, Ben. Blue-collar guys like you are easy marks. You work hard, you're loyal, you don't ask questions, and judges love to stick it to the controlling husband who keeps his wife from accessing their money. Except I'm not controlling, and it's not our money. It's my money that I earned while you planned my destruction. You think you're so smart, Nina spat, but you have no idea what you're dealing with. Rick has connections, lawyers, judges, police. You're just a nobody from nowhere. You can't win this. Watch me. I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Oh, and Nina? You might want to call Rick. I had a conversation with him this morning. I think he's having second thoughts about your partnership. I left her standing there in her hotel bathrobe, looking like her world was falling apart, because it was. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Nina had clearly spoken to Rick. The messages started angry. You bastard! How dare you threaten Rick? Then turned desperate. Ben, please, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. And finally, became vicious. You're going to regret this. I'm going to take everything from you. Everything. I deleted them all and made breakfast for Dylan. My son had been quieter than usual lately, and I could see the stress of his parents' separation wearing on him. Dad? Dylan looked up from his cereal. Mom called me last night. I set down my coffee cup. What did she say? She said you were trying to keep her from seeing me. She was crying. My heart broke a little. Even in the middle of her con game, Nina was still manipulating our son. Dylan, I would never keep you from seeing your mom, but she's made some choices that have consequences. What kind of choices? Dylan was 14, old enough to understand more than I wanted him to, but he was also my son, and he deserved honesty. Your mom has been lying to us, about money, about where she's been, about who she's been with. And when people lie about important things, it breaks trust. Dylan nodded slowly. Is that why she's been acting so weird? Probably. And why she's always on her phone? Yeah, buddy. That too. Dylan finished his cereal in silence. As I drove him to school, he asked one more question that nearly broke me. Dad? Are you going to be okay? I looked at my son in the rearview mirror, this amazing kid who was more worried about me than himself, and made him a promise. I'm going to be better than okay, Dylan. We both are. After dropping him off, I drove to work, but my first stop wasn't a job site. It was the office of Tom Bradley, A private investigator, Patricia Hernandez, had recommended. Tom was a former cop, about 50, with the kind of steady presence that made you trust him immediately. "Mr. Forrest," he said, after reviewing my evidence. "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen a case this well documented by the perpetrators themselves. Can you help me?" "I can do better than that. I can help you destroy them." Tom leaned back in his chair. "Your wife and Rick Mason have been sloppy. They've left a trail a mile wide, and not just here in town." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I made some calls after Patricia contacted me yesterday. Rick Mason isn't his real name. It's Richard Kozlowski. He's got warrants in 2 states for fraud and identity theft. Your wife has been traveling with a federal fugitive." The room spun a little. "Federal fugitive?" "The FBI has been looking for Richard, for 3 years. He's wanted in connection with a multi-state fraud ring that's stolen over $5 million from victims across the country. And Nina? As far as I can tell, she's not wanted for anything yet. But conspiracy charges are definitely on the table." Tom opened a file folder. "Here's what I found with just 1 day of digging." The folder contained photographs of Nina and Rick together, financial records showing money transfers between their accounts, and most damning of all, documentation of at least 6 other victims in 4 different states. How many people have they done this to? That I can prove? 6 married couples, all divorced within the last 5 years, all with settlements heavily favoring the wife. The pattern is always the same. Rick moves to a new city, sets up a business, identifies wealthy targets. The wife, sometimes it's Nina, sometimes it's other women, seduces the mark, marries him, and after a few years they engineer a messy divorce. I stared at the photographs. Nina laughing with Rick at restaurants I couldn't afford. Nina wearing jewelry I'd never seen. Nina living a double life while I worked 60-hour weeks to support what I thought was my family. What happens now? Now we contact the FBI. With your evidence and what I've found, they'll have enough to arrest Rick immediately. Nina's fate depends on how cooperative she wants to be. And my divorce? With this evidence, your wife will be lucky if she doesn't end up in federal prison. She's not getting custody, she's not getting alimony, and she's definitely not getting half your assets. I left Tom's office feeling like I could breathe for the first time in weeks, but I still had one more stop to make. Mason's Motors was closed. A for lease sign was already in the window, and Rick's red Camaro was nowhere to be seen. I called Tom Bradley. "Rick's gone." I figured he might run. "Don't worry, I've already contacted the FBI. They'll put out a BOLO alert. He won't get far." But Nina was still at the Marriott. I knew because her car was still in the parking lot. This time, I didn't knock. I used the key card I'd lifted from her purse the day before, a trick I'd learned from watching too many crime shows with Dylan. Nina was on the phone when I walked in, pacing the suite in jeans and a sweater, her perfect composure completely gone. "Rick, you can't just leave me here. We had a deal." She saw me and went silent. "I'll call you back." "Don't bother," I said. "Rick's halfway to Mexico by now." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Richard Kozlowski, federal fugitive. I'm talking about the FBI warrant for his arrest. I'm talking about the $5 million he's stolen from victims across the country." I sat down in the suite's expensive chair. "I'm talking about you being an accessory to federal crimes." Nina sank onto the bed like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. "You're lying." "Am I?" "When's the last time you heard from Rick?" She looked at her phone. He said he had to take care of some business. He'll be back." "He's not coming back, Nina. He's running, and he left you here to take the fall." For the first time since this whole mess started, I actually felt sorry for my wife. She looked small and scared, and very much alone. "What do you want, Ben?" "I want the truth, all of it. How long have you been working with Rick? How many people have you done this to? And why did you pick me?" Nina was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, Her voice was barely a whisper. I met Rick 3 years ago, at a conference in Chicago. I was there for work. He was between projects. He was charming, sophisticated, everything you weren't. She looked up at me. I don't mean that to hurt you. It's just the truth. Go on. He told me about his business. Not the car dealership, his real business. Finding unhappy wives and helping them get what they deserved from their marriages. You mean helping them commit fraud? He called it evening the playing field. He said men like you, blue-collar guys, you take your wives for granted. You expect us to be happy with small lives, small dreams, small everything. So you decided to destroy my life to make yours bigger. I decided to take what I was owed. Nina's voice cracked. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who thinks changing air filters is a career? Someone who's perfectly content with a 30-year mortgage and a 2-week vacation at the lake. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who thinks your life's work is beneath them? We stared at each other across the hotel suite. 15 years of marriage reduced to mutual resentment and broken trust. How many others, Nina? You were supposed to be the last one. Rick said after we finished with you, we'd have enough money to disappear. Start over somewhere new. How many? 6, including you. 6 families destroyed. 6 men who'd worked hard and loved their wives, only to be betrayed and left with nothing. The FBI is going to want to talk to you, I said. Are you going to turn me in? I thought about it. Really thought about it. This woman had spent 8 months planning my destruction. She'd maxed out our credit cards, betrayed our marriage, manipulated our son, and conspired to take everything I'd worked for. But she was also Dylan's mother. That depends. On what? On whether you're willing to help them catch Rick and make this right for his other victims. Nina nodded slowly. What do you want from me? I want you to sign divorce papers giving me full custody of Dylan and waiving any claim to marital assets. I want you to cooperate fully with the FBI, and I want you to stay away from our son until you get your life sorted out. Ben, those are my terms, Nina. Take them or take your chances with federal prosecutors. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks, her perfect facade finally crumbling completely. I never meant for it to go this far. I wanted more. I wanted to matter. You did matter. You mattered to Dylan. You mattered to me. But that wasn't enough for you. I stood up to leave, then turned back one last time. For what it's worth, Nina, I hope you find what you're looking for. But you won't find it by destroying other people's lives. I left her there in that hotel suite, surrounded by the wreckage of her schemes, and drove home to my son. 3 days later, the FBI arrested Richard Kozlowski, Rick Mason, at a truck stop outside Phoenix. He was driving a stolen car and carrying fake identification, along with $50,000 in cash and Nina's jewelry. Nina cooperated fully with the investigation, providing evidence that led to the arrest of 3 other conspirators and the recovery of nearly $2 million in stolen assets. In exchange for her cooperation, she received 5 years probation and an order to pay restitution to the victims. She also signed divorce papers that gave me everything I'd asked for. But the real victory came 2 weeks later, at Dylan's soccer championship game. I was sitting in the bleachers, watching my son play the game of his life, when Patricia Hernandez sat down beside me. Thought you'd want to know, she said. The restitution payments from Nina's case are going to more than cover your legal fees. Plus, the FBI recovered some of the money Rick stole from you through those credit card charges. How much? About $12,000. Not everything, but enough to make a difference. I watched Dylan score a goal and pump his fist in celebration. He looked up at the stands, found me, and grinned. It's not about the money anymore, I told Patricia. It's about the principle. After the game, Dylan's team won 3-2, and he scored twice. We went to our usual pizza place to celebrate. The same place where I'd confronted Lana Morrison 2 weeks earlier. Lana was there again, sitting alone this time, picking at a salad and looking miserable. She saw us come in and started to leave, but I stopped her. "Lana, how's Nina?" She looked surprised that I was being civil. "She's struggling. The whole thing with Rick, the FBI investigation, losing Dylan. It's been hard on her. I'm sure it has. She asks about him, about Dylan. She misses him." I looked at my son, who was studying the menu like he hadn't memorized it years ago. "She made her choices, Lana. Actions have consequences. She's still his mother." "No," Dylan said quietly, not looking up from his menu. "She stopped being my mom when she decided Dad wasn't good enough for her." Lana's face crumpled. She mumbled something about being sorry and left the restaurant. Dylan looked up at me. "Was that too harsh?" "No, buddy." That was honest. 6 months later, I got a letter from Nina. She was living in Portland, working as a waitress, attending court-ordered counseling sessions, and trying to rebuild her life. "Ben," the letter said, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope someday you and Dylan can find it in your hearts to give me a second chance. I know I destroyed everything good in my life, but I want you to know that I'm trying to become a better person, the person I should have been all along. I don't expect you to believe me. I don't expect anything from you, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry for everything. Tell Dylan I love him, and that not a day goes by that I don't regret the choices I made. Nina." I showed the letter to Dylan, now 15 and taller than me, captain of his high school soccer team, honor roll student, and the best thing that ever happened to me. "What do you think?" I asked. Dylan read the letter twice, then folded it carefully. "I think she's sorry she got caught. Maybe. Or maybe she's really trying to change. Does it matter?" I thought about that. Did it matter? Nina had spent 8 months planning to destroy my life. She'd betrayed our marriage, manipulated our son, and conspired with a federal fugitive to steal everything I'd worked for. But she was also a broken person who'd made terrible choices and was now facing the consequences. "I think," I said finally, "that forgiveness isn't about her. It's about us, about not carrying anger around for the rest of our lives." Dylan nodded. "So what do? We live our lives, we be happy. And maybe, someday, when she's proven that she's really changed, we'll consider letting her back in. And if she hasn't changed, then we'll still be happy and she'll still be alone." Dylan smiled, my smile, not Nina's, and went back to his. "Homework?" That night, I sat in my home office, looking at the framed photo on my desk. It was from Dylan's championship game, the moment he scored the winning goal. His face was pure joy, unmarked by the betrayal and disappointment that had defined the previous year. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "This is Rick. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it and blocked the number. Some ATMs dispense money when you ask nicely. Others require the right PIN, but this ATM was permanently out of order. I had a son to raise, a business to run, and a life to live. Nina and Rick could find another mark, another victim, another family to destroy. They'd gotten their last withdrawal from me. Dylan called from the kitchen. "Dad, can you help me with my math homework?" "Coming, buddy," I called back. I turned off my phone, closed my laptop, and went to help my son with his algebra. Because that's what fathers do. They show up. They stay. They choose their family over everything else, even when their family chooses someone else, but especially when their family chooses them back. 2 years later, I married Sarah Chen, a teacher at Dylan's school who thought fixing air conditioners was noble work and who never once called me an ATM. Dylan walked her down the aisle at our wedding, grinning like he'd won another championship. Nina sent a card but didn't attend. She was still in Portland, still working as a waitress, still trying to rebuild her life. Richard Kozlowski, was serving 15 years in federal prison for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. He'd tried to contact me twice more from jail, but I'd never responded. Some stories end with reconciliation and forgiveness. This one ends with justice and new beginnings. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes the best revenge is living well.